I'm happy to be here with you all this evening. Thank you for joining this wonderful conversation that definitely needs to be had. I work with the PRISM Collaborative, like Alex said. I am the peer family navigator, which is primarily there to connect Black folks to mental health. And it's been a journey, something I'm really excited about. And I am here to spread the word on all the great things and services that we have to offer. And to answer any questions, talk a little bit about my own experience. I am a person with lived experience as well. Um, and that's why mental health is so important to me. Just a little bit about myself. I like to give folks just a background of who I am. So throughout this conversation, you have a little bit of a background about me. I am born and raised in Seattle, Washington. I am a Black woman, which I wear proudly, as you can see. And I lead with that for every day, all day. I am also a mother of three young Black children, and I'm married, a wife of 8 years. Outside of this work, I also do manage transitional living homes for homeless youth. And so I'm dipping and dabbing in a lot, but it's something that I really enjoy doing and just talking to folks and just having these conversations. But yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
Well, good evening, Alfani Wamba, and I am I'm first of all, I'm just really thrilled to be here. I'm really thrilled to be able to contribute to a conversation that it may or may not be new to one or more people in the digital room here. The place for centering Black mental health. I have uh, I have lived experience as a carer for uh, folks who are really moving through with or working through with behavioral health, mental health challenges. And so apart from my professional affiliation, uh, I want to say that my joy for being a part of this conversation extends into and then well beyond my my professional persona. Uh, Speaking of that, I am at the University of Washington School of Social Work as an associate teaching professor and am supporting the social work initiatives to encounter uh, in a meaningful way uh, uh, racism and, as we'll see, white supremacy disorder and its uh, discontents. Um, I am also a husband, a father, a grandfather, a son, a brother, and I've recently experienced being called uncle, and and a longtime community contributor in some meaningful way. I hope I've been in the been let's see, of my 62 years, I've lived only 4 of those years outside of the state of Washington, and I've lived in the city of Seattle since I was 12. And I'll step back.
My name is Karen Smith Frazier, and I am the Director of Operations for Africans on the East Side. We are a small but mighty organization that does a lot of outreach to immigrant families, particularly African immigrant families and youth. Adam Deba is our founder and executive director, and um, we have been pretty active in, especially since COVID, in really establishing some spaces where young people and families can check in and see how they're doing. Um, We offer some programming. One is called Culture Clash, where youth come in and they talk about how they're doing and really their feedback and the information we get from them kind of tailors what our programming is going to be. And one of the main issues is mental health support. I'm originally from Washington, D.C. I am married, have two adult children, two young grandchildren. Um, I have been active, Adam and I have been active volunteers with the Bellevue School District and the East Side, on the East Side, for me since 2008, for Adam, probably twice as long as me. But our goal is to just cultivate a safe spaces where African immigrants in particular and brown folks, people of color, feel like they can be themselves. And we try to help them uncover their power. We don't have to empower them, but help them to uncover their power, to take care of themselves and to seek assistance when they need it. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, appreciate those intros, and I do have a few questions here, although Kalfani mentioned that he had just a few slides. I'm wondering if maybe we can look at those and then kind of respond to them and then jump into the planned questions.
Let's see if we can have one of our attendees, our general attendees, if you can read what you see. Anybody can do that. Just read out loud.
The biggest challenge to Black mental health is the biggest challenge to all mental health: white supremacy, D/O, racism.
Thank you. Yeah, D/O is an abbreviation. Yeah, this is me being my professional self. My apologies with the acronyms. Disorder. Yeah, white supremacy disorder is a synonym for racism, and that's not my determination. That's the determination of what is now the Association of Black Psychologists. In 1969, they were a committee of the Association of the APA, the American Psychological Association, and they ultimately did form an organization and proposed or contended ever since 1969 that a synonym for racism is appropriately white supremacy disorder. And I emphasize disorder because in this day and age, there are some people who are actually touting white supremacy as a appropriate way of being. So I think it's really, really important when we acknowledge the reality of white supremacy that we include its dismissal, its denigration, its rejection, and this is one way to do it, particularly in a behavioral health community. White supremacy disorder, racism, and again, a little bit more. There's other folks who have talked about this. These books are written 2 decades apart. The Armour is a professor of law at USC who wrote Negrophobia, and I'm particularly struck by the 2 subtitles. Roland Dr. Martin is somebody, a media personality now, and the importance of these subtitles do speak to the significance of this. And I am contending that the rest of what we consider behavioral health links, at least indirectly and often, I think we can argue directly to white supremacy disorder or racism. So Roland talks about the fear, the white fear of the browning of America, and Professor Armour talks about the hidden costs of being Black. I contend when people ask, well, what are you doing about it or what's positive? Here at the University of Washington, we're developing this notion of decarceral well-being, or the quest for health, because salutogenesis, this idea of health creation, is a worthy antidote to white supremacy disorder. We can all, and we all in this community especially, believe ardently that recovery is possible, and that would include recovery from white supremacy disorder. So the quest we some of us on campus are pursuing is the quest for health creation or salutogenesis. And then the question becomes, the question was also, what can NAMI do? And I'm really excited about one of my colleagues who's now an ancestor. Dr. Jim Lay wrote Communicating for Cultural Competence, and he even included 7 principles, kind of modeling after the Kwanzaa framework, 7 principles for cultural competence. And time may or may not allow us to go into those, but I think that any of us can get into a book club, any of us can reach out to 1 or 2 other people and decide that we want to learn how to communicate better across cultures. And Professor Lay offered a blueprint for doing so. And thank you for being audience to this quick summary of my work. And I'll first step back, and then I'll welcome for my colleagues, and then I'll certainly welcome any discussion or inquiries about these ideas. Stepping back.
Yeah, so I did want to give an opportunity to either the panelists want to dive into some of that. Otherwise I can move on or have any response.
Is this regarding barriers to access, your first question? Well, I mean, I would say to your first question, what do you think are currently the most prominent needs? I say barrier to access is one of the major ones. There are a limited number of culturally competent providers. And just because even for providers of color, just because you have a certain color of skin doesn't mean that you understand someone else's culture, their lived experience, and just being sensitive with some of the cultural aspects of that person. So that would be one thing. Another is access due to lack of money. What I found is I'm also a registered nurse, and what I found is that when I am trying to find providers for my young Black clients and students, I find that a lot of the providers are self-pay. And so that also doesn't allow access. Another one is misdiagnosis or overdiagnosis. What I have seen in my practice, and even I just read an article in the NIH library regarding just the overdiagnosis of youth, particularly Black youth, Black people. And oftentimes what I see is anxiety, and the students are being diagnosed with ADHD, or they're diagnosed with ADHD and they have anxiety. But that piece is not supported and they're not taken care of. And also what I see is, instead of being supportive as caregivers, school staff and even health staff often penalize our Black youth for their mental health conditions. And so it's more discipline than healthcare being provided. So I see these as just a few of the major barriers to access, and where we need to do a lot of work in that area.
Excellent. Thank you. Just for the audience's benefit, the question on the table is what are the currently the most prominent needs related to Black mental health in our communities that you see? And then Jamel, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks. I agree with everything Karen said. One of my like my very first comment I was going to say is financially. I know a lot of folks who aren't able to take part in mental health counseling therapy primarily because financial challenges and barriers that they have. And folks say, you know, insurance covers that. That's true for some parts of insurance. If you do have a plan that would cover such benefit, but there are insurance companies that don't cover that. And so folks are left to have to pay for this on their own. And this what we are living in right now for a lot of folks, that's not something that could happen tomorrow. And so, you know, that is a challenge. Another one that I often think about is just the lack of Black mental health therapists available. I oftentimes I'm working with clients, and one of the first comments that they have is, I want to talk to somebody that looks like me. And I cannot tell you how challenging that is to find someone that can work with clients that look like me. And so oftentimes they end up having to talk with their friends, talk with their service providers that most likely aren't Black. And then that doesn't necessarily give them what they're looking for. And so they fall back, and then that creates barriers and challenges around trusting mental health therapists and trusting the system because they're failed at that point. I think the stigma around mental health in the Black community has come a long way, in my opinion. I did grow up very conservative. I grew up in the church, and one of the things that I was taught is it's not a real thing. Depression's not real, anxiety is not real. That's just something that you say. And so I think just having these conversations alone does prove that we are moving away from that. And I do have folks that, you know, you have to kind of talk through, like, this is actually a very, very real thing. Like I mentioned at the beginning of my talk, I do run transitional living homes. And I remember I have a client who was born in Jamaica. And I was talking to him about just the things he's experiencing being in high school, experiencing homelessness, and doesn't have natural supports, anyone in his family to call. And that led to him having some depression. And first thing he said to me is, "That's not a real thing. I don't think that's a real thing." And you know, having to kind of tear those layers apart for him without him necessarily realizing that's something that he's doing is also a challenge. But that's something that needs to be done. Racial trauma, intergenerational trauma that sits with a lot of folks that looks like me. And we aren't sure how that intertwines with our daily life, but it comes up more often than we know. And so, yeah, these are barriers that happen to people every day. One article that I've read through the McLean Hospital, which I'm more than happy to drop in the chat. They conducted a study, and in one study, physicians working with Black patients were 33% less likely to engage in patient-centered communications than they were with white patients. And so that goes back to the conversation of, like, trusting your service providers. A lot of us don't. A lot of us don't. We don't trust our service providers. I have my own experience of, like, you know, reaching out to service providers that don't look like me and them not understanding my needs, not understanding what I'm saying. And then when that happens, I remember just being like, oh, I'm never messaging them again. And that wasn't conducive to anything, to any of my mental health well-being. And so, you know, these are challenges that we face. The barriers to treatment, like Karen had talked about earlier. Finding treatment is one of the hardest things in Washington State that you can do. Even finding inpatient treatments, a lot of them have so many different barriers to getting patients enrolled. And when they don't, they're full. So now you are left to kind of figure it out on your own. And that oftentimes just leads you back to step one. So, you know, all of these things that unfortunately are prominent in the Black community, I think what's going to help is just by having the conversations. You're not alone, right? Like the things that you go through every day is hard, but there are things that we can do to better ourselves, even when it doesn't feel like it. And so I am oftentimes finding myself having those conversations with my clients, with my Black and Brown clients, because we're taught to do it all. We're taught to, you're not allowed to have those feelings. You have to pick up your boots and keep going. Um, and that's not reality. So yeah, those are the barriers that I've seen, and those are the barriers that I'm hoping that, don't continue to happen in my community.
And if we add on a language barrier on top of all that, we can just see how much worse it can be.
Great. And I do see. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, good morning. I'm Adam. I'm far away. That's why I can be on camera. I am in the Gambia, in West Africa, joining you guys. But these topics are very important, and I'm excited to tell you guys that being in this field as long as I have been, I'm also an immigrant who works daily in the United States with people dealing with mental health. And the biggest issue is, for me, language and also the stigma of it. My community sees mental health as stigma, and they don't ask for help. And when they ask for help within the school system, or when they go to school, the support is not there because things are not translated to them that they understand. They are just given in English and just let them go figure it out. So sometimes when I start working with them, it's already as bad as it can be. And that's the challenge that we face every single day with these families, youths, and everybody with it. So the system needs to change and the culture needs to change as United States is becoming so diverse. We need to have these conversations and figuring out how we can really give these people what they need to help them really survive in situation that they are going through. Sometimes they send a youth home and a family will call and nobody in the school system will tell them what's going on. And when I step in, I know that it's language barrier, it's also the way they are treated, and the resources that they give them don't help them at all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I did want to, because Jamila kind of ended there on talking about that the stigma and the people at least that you've talked with in the community has gotten better. And that was one of our questions is what progress have you seen in mental health support recently, or do you have any specific stories of inspiration? So I kind of wanted to go into that next. And we could start with you, Jamila. You could pick up where you left, or anyone else could go ahead and take
Yeah,
that.
sure. I'd love to. I think, like I said, just the conversations. Like I said, I grew up very conservative and not allowed to have the talk around like I'm feeling like this and why. Kind of taught to keep it in the shell and deal with it, and it'll go away eventually, or it's not a real thing anyways. And so I think just having the conversation is the first step. I do have an aunt that has been diagnosed with schizophrenia. And so, I did have a period in my life where I was a caretaker and I was 16, 17 years old dealing with a family member, and I didn't even recognize that this is what was going on. And it took me having to have those conversations with my service provider, going to school, learning about all the things to know like this is what's going on and why. And I remember sitting down and having a conversation with her and her not truly understanding the conversation. But I think just sitting with her in that moment really meant a lot for me to let her know she's not alone. And what you're experiencing is real. And so I think, you know, that's the first part. I also think, especially with the youth, because that's primarily who I work with, they are very honest about what they've gone through and who's hurt them and why. Um, and I think that's hard to relive trauma all the time. That's hard to talk about it. It's hard to do it when you don't have anybody to lean on. And so, you know, luckily we have folks like my case managers. Luckily we have programs like the Family Peer Navigator that can help connect them to resources that they aren't dealing with this alone. Suffering with your mental health in silence is not okay. It doesn't help anyone. One thing I think that has also helped is reminding folks to take care of themselves and that you can take care of yourself. You can practice self-care. You can practice self-love, and that's not being selfish. It's a conversation I have to have almost daily, especially for Black women. We don't put ourselves first. It's generally our family, our friends, our coworkers, our, you know, our job, everything else, and then we come last. And so, you know, having to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves by going to therapy, by, you know, maybe you want to go get a pedicure once a week. That's taking care of yourself. Maybe you're reading a book. Maybe you're going for a walk or going to a dance class. Something to where you're taking care of yourself. I think is really been a huge factor and something that I've seen that's helped progress this conversation. But I'm always go back to talking about it. Like, we got to talk about it, and it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to have those emotions come through. And, you know, a lot of us are suffering from trauma that we're really not sure why. Even at my big age, I'm always like going back to what I went through as a kid because that still lives with me. So yeah, I think, you know, we're on the right path, but it's going to be forums like this. It's going to be discussions like this that's going to lead us to you know, our end goal of what we want to see for Black mental health. Still have a long way to go, but I'm proud to even just be here to talk about it.
I think the isolation during the COVID pandemic, in addition to George Floyd's murder and so many other murders and violence against Black people, really traumatized the community during a very vulnerable time for the world. And that was the time when Africans on the East Side came to be. We saw that there was a need for people to gather and talk. There was no agenda in the beginning. It was just a safe space for Black folks to come together online and just know that they weren't invisible, that it wasn't all in their head, you know, that things that they had been experiencing were really happening. So having that outlet, I think, was helpful. But you know, the isolation of the pandemic left a lot of folks feeling depressed and really stuck on their phones and going down the World Wide Web monster, where everything was, you know, especially the youth, were just really comparing themselves to everybody else and just falling deeper and deeper into like depression and just not feeling good about themselves. And so Africans on the East Side, through our focus groups, we listened to what the youth were saying, and we had a culture clash workshop on mental wellness. And we just talked about, you know, had folks check in and provided some resources, even some like in the moment self-care things that they could do, in addition to, you know, resources for more help and, you know, if they needed it. But it was a beginning. And what I found is that our workshop and other ones like that, a lot of folks are accessing some counseling online that wasn't there before COVID that I knew of. You know, there are a lot of meditation apps, there support groups popping up, people just being more open to talking and to admitting that they need help, that it's okay to need help. And so I think we're starting to break down some of those stereotypes that I'm okay, I'm I do everything. And I think the youth are teaching the parents that this is okay. And Adam and I, we walk with the parents during these things. When issues come up, there are people in the community that are willing to walk with the person who is having a struggle. And so what I'm seeing is, in spite of everything else going on in the country and in the world, there are good folks who are stepping up and walking with folks who are having mental health crisis, who are in crisis.
And what I would add is I'm glad to see the city of Seattle, for example, stepping up. I'm glad to see on the east side, I'm aware that the Bellevue Care program has expanded, and so community supports in terms of 911 non-lethal responding has expanded, and that's something that our work includes with support for the Seattle Care program. I was looking for a link, and I expect I'll find it that is not a secure link, but all the links I realize my cookies are situated for the secure links because of the work we're doing with those departments. But if you Google or look up Seattle Care, community assisted response and engagement, then that is some of the collaborative work that we at the at my program is the Learning Center for Decarceral Wellbeing, and we're collaborating with the care team, and we also have a good strong relationship with the Bellevue Fire Care, Bellevue Police Care team as well. So the community assisted non-lethal community assisted responding would also be one of those positive trends that I think is happening in the vein of anti-racist work and in the vein of responding pro-socially to the George Floyd losses and catastrophes.
Thank you, everyone, for what you are saying. Also, I've been helping with the care thing that you were talking about in Bellevue. But I think the biggest problem that I told them is language, because people tend to forget about language. And most of the people that I advised and gave them that we have some communities, and I work with people who speak like many languages, but we tend to forget it because what they always tell me is cost. And when you bring cost into mental health with the immigrant population and the culture of people, then you are losing what they need, because you are not able to give them what they really, really need. Because what I see is, if you are treating someone, like Karen was saying, with mental health, and the whole family is included, and the language is there, you are helping them as a whole. But if you just focus on the kid or the youth in the school, because they understand the language, but their families and other siblings don't understand it, then we are not helping them. We're creating more problems. And then when they go to school, I think we need to stop the diagnosing a kid without doctors or anything. Because I've been in the shoes. I walk the shoes. I have 3 daughters. And if I was not strong enough to stand up and say that my daughter don't have ADHD, she just needs to be challenged more in the classroom, they will diagnose her. And teachers and people in the school system shouldn't be diagnosing kids. And that's what's really happening within my culture, within the cultures that I work with. And it's a big problem. But when we do now we are digging and understanding really what is really going on, and then they tell us, and then families step up to help us. And I also be there to be that voice. And like I said, I was the forgotten voices, I call them, because nobody tends to reach to those voices. But I'm glad with what NAMI is trying to do. And if we can culturally help you guys sustain and do that, the success that you guys will have, it's going to be mighty and powerful, because these people need what they need. And the telephone is what really causes all this problem. Like I told you guys, I am in Africa. And right now, I am with 2 teenagers in a room. And every second, it's almost 3 a.m. here. And you can hear their phones going like there is no other thing important in life. And we really need to help them to know that there is more to life than just the telephone.
So Adam has raised multiple issues, and I think some of them do connect. In fact, I want to propose that maybe starting with the telephone, the digital device. I wonder if you would agree that any resource can be a force for good or evil. And so if that is true, I wonder the extent, for example, to which the digital device might actually help access or resolve some of the language challenges in the schools. I would look to that I ask that as a question. I want to be curious about that. I also want to be curious about getting systems to talk to one another. I'm curious about other resources with both the city of Bellevue, well, each of the municipalities where we are, all the municipalities where each of the hearers of this program are, and the supports that they have to penetrate language differences. Lastly, I would just invite that what we're really, among the things that we're talking about is in the challenge of resources, does go back ultimately to racism and the disproportionate expenses that different communities benefit from or do not benefit from. But I think that lastly, what I would say in sum is the key is, again, communication. It's the book that I shared in the beginning, Communicating for Cultural Competence. That our goal and our priority is finding ways that more and more systems can talk to and listen to one another. I'd be happy to collaborate with you, Adam, on finding ways that systems can be more effectively communicating with each other.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we can do it through system and also peer-to-peer. Peer-to-peer, and also we can really bring in the social media aspect of it, but there is a way that we are trying to go ahead about doing that through TikTok and stuff, because when you do it through that and then peer-to-peer, they tend to take it much better than an adult just coming in and looking at a kid and saying in the school, oh, because they don't understand. And also, before I continue, the people that are trained to work with these youths should also be culturally competent and also be trained to understand how to handle them rather than just diagnosing them because they are misbehaving, but they don't understand that they are culturally facing mental illness, depression, and all the things within. Because when I go deep and walk with them, I understand that. And I think building trust and is key, and also being kind and compassionate towards them. You will get what you need out of them. But if you just go in as someone who is just going to diagnose and just start treating them like they don't belong, then you are losing them.
Okay, we'll jump in here just because we've had a few questions and some of them kind of fit in real nicely with what we've been talking about. So one of the questions that came to the chat was from a youth, I assume. I wonder if there are any ways or opportunities that non-Black high school students or youth can assist Black mental health. And I'm going to go ahead and hijack that and add a second portion to it and ask how NAMI Eastside can be as well, if you could do a part B to that answer. How NAMI Eastside or other, mental health advocate minded people may be able to help the Black mental health in the community.
I'll start there. I guess one thing I would ask is, do you have any Black friends? I mean, it's hard to advocate for somebody you don't know. A lot of times we tend to stick in our own groups. So having some relationship with people who are different from you. I think that's helps break down barriers so that it's not like somebody coming to help me, but it's my friend who is helping me or who wants to walk with me during this journey. So I think that's educate yourself on the issues. I saw something in the chat about the mortality rate for Black women in childbirth, and even the infant mortality is so much higher than white folks. And this has been going on since Black folks have been in this country. The healthcare system, no matter what education level of the women, they are still having poor birth outcomes, and much more difficult time than the majority, the white population. So we have to look at systems. We have to educate ourselves and then vote. Just be aware of who's supporting policies that support Black folks and who support healthcare for healthcare, including mental health for Black folks. So it's not just one thing. It's a lot of things, and it shouldn't have to be Black folks who are educating you about Black folks' issues, because if Black folk, it's an American issue. It's not just Black folks' issue. And so I think that's key. NAMI having programs like this, forums like this is helpful because it helps us feel as if we're being heard. We're able to speak our minds and maybe help educate somebody on the issues at hand. I know that you have some youth programming. I would like to see NAMI go out more into the community. I think the programming is more, that I know of, is more of a come to us, we're doing this program. And where we have communities that have, stigma is a big thing, a language barrier. That's where you can partner with community organizations that are working in certain populations, certain cultures that can partner with you so that we can get the resources where they need to be. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to build on what I heard embedded in so much of what Karen was saying was was looking at structures and systems. First, I want to thank the student for the question, and just as I appreciate Adam being up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning to participate and enrich the conversation across the world. For the student who asks, how can students support Black mental health? I would invite the student to attend to the systems of the school. So, what are Blacks showing up in it? Are Black stories showing up in the curriculum? Are positive Black examples? Is the imagery? Are there what do the wall what art is on the walls at the school, and what pictures are showing up in your learning modules? Is there a presence, a positive presence for in the imagery, iconography, and in the art in the schools in the curriculum? It can be as simple as inviting Black student or Black students to collaborate in your groups on projects, because you're doing learning, and are the Black students welcome in your learning groups and learning modules and classrooms? And then lastly, to NAMI, for me on this one, I think the language, the recurring theme in this conversation seems to include language. And I wonder if the extent to which NAMI is able to imagine the different languages and language access strategies that NAMI is using. Is NAMI Eastside aware of the dominant languages that are not that are distinct from English of the populations that you serve? And is the information accessible? Are you connected to the translation services of the different municipalities? And maybe even could you imagine collaborating with grant writers and other funders to capacitate the language? So, the last thing on language, I would say also, for African Americans have a language difference, and can it be seen as a difference rather than a deficit? There are whole conversations about African American language, Ebonics, African American vernacular English, and it is are the words that come out of your client system's mouths welcome and responded to favorably without correction? Just like are the hairstyles that naturally come out of people's hair and head, are those welcome? So those would be the ways that I would invite that we attend to systems and structures, and are they inclusive? Thanks.
Thank
I
you.
am very grateful for NAMI, because they have been listening to us and to understand what we are really trying to do and to maintain. But I really like also what you said about language. Many of the groups that I go in, they make it clear to us with Africans on the East Side that language is so expensive. It's something that you don't look into. But I know that anything that you are doing culturally, if you are not culturally competent in it, you won't be successful. And if you don't have the right languages or the resources you need to be successful with this youth, you are not going to be successful. Because I've been doing this work, like Karen said. I've been in it with Karen for decades in the East Side. But I'm very grateful, and thank you for appreciating me to be up at now 3 a.m. working with you guys across the globe. anywhere I am, and it includes youth and families on this topic, I will be up if the internet is correct and do it, because this is my passion. This is what I love to do, and this is invented in me, in my blood for so long, and I won't change it for a thing. And I appreciate NAMI for having this conference and for me to participate at this time of the night. And so I hope we can continue to work and challenge the policies, legislations, and stuff to change and to understand where we are really coming from and for the right fundings to come in. Because if you are in a community and also in a, in the United States, everybody should belong. It's not just us, a handful of people. And some of the youths, I go for a walk with some of the African youth. I know that someone from another culture can also help you to learn, but they don't do it in a nice way. So that's why most of these Black youths just self-isolate. They rather go for a walk and then they open up and tell me really what's really going on. But there are schools that we really need to help to understand what's really going on. So that's what I have to share with you guys, and I'll let you guys finish, and then maybe we will be done in 5 minutes, and then I'll go back to sleep. But I really appreciate this.
Thank you. And I know it's time to go, so I'll make it very short. But I think in regards to like the question, what we can do, I love this question. We can continue to have the conversations. We can make this easier for folks to get access to. One things I want to continue to see is more internships for youth so that they can, you know, do the things that they want to do. There needs to be more of that available and easily available to them. They'll make it very low barrier for them to be involved. So that they can join in and be a part of it. I love that NAMI is putting on the Mental Health Youth Conference in March. I'm really excited to take part in that as well. Seeing conferences really focused on youth is super important. The youth are our future. I know that's so cliche to say, but it's true. And so, you know, having space for them to come and feel safe is super important. Allowing them to talk about their experiences is super important. And so I definitely want to be a part of that, and I want to see more of that. I do want to touch base on the question that Diana posed in the chat about the mortality rate. I am a person who had 2 very high risk pregnancies, and the best thing I could have done is advocate for myself. And so I think that is something that you can continue to encourage your patients to do, is to advocate even when they feel like it's not going anywhere. Continue to press, like, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I need, and this is why, until they get the answers that they need, because we are our best advocates and no one's going to listen to us until we knock down those doors. And so unfortunately we do have to do that. It's necessary. And I can tell you, if I did not advocate, I may not be sitting in front of you today. And, you know, I think we just need to continue to have these forums. Like, it's great to be a part of something where I can to talk about the things that I've gone through, that I've seen clients go through, and really implement the changes that we need to see moving forward so that we are seeing the progress. And so, you know, just continue to have these conversations. I love it, and this is very important to me, like I said it before. And I think I really want to shout out NAMI. I think you guys are a great organization, and I think you are on the right path. Also, just hiring more people that look like me, make it diverse. I love how you have a diverse group of folks on your team, and they come from different walks of life. I love that, making it diverse and continue to make it diverse. Make your board more diverse. Have the youth a part of the board. Have youth, like, it really needs to be youth centered, because like they're the ones who, you know, and also adults. Like, I don't want to shy away from that, but seeing how much our youth in COVID has impacted them, it is really a big challenge. So just continue to do the things that you're doing.
Great. And yeah, she touched on we are over time. So, you know, feel free to go, but there's only one question left in the chat there. And so I did want to ask it real quick. And then, you know, if everyone wants to stay on to like maybe dive deeper into Diana's afterwards or whatever, we'll see. But just this last question that came through was, as a Native mom raising mixed boys with dad that was also Black Native, how can we get them service when it seems that they're judged daily through education and life in general? And I'll just open that up to whoever wants to tackle it.
Thank you. And yes, that is, so if I understand the question, it's integration. It feels ultimately like a cultural competence question. It feels ultimately that you're questing for connection to folks with similar lived experience and that of your children, the experiences of your children, and it kind of feels like what I know. For example, as I mentioned in my intro, I've been a resident of Seattle since I was 12. So, and Seattle is interesting because for African Americans, because of course, I think the population of the African American population is plus or minus 5, maybe somewhere between 3 and 6%, and is shrinking. So there are now plus or minus let's see, 52,000 African Americans in the city of Seattle proper, when there were 75,000 at the turn of the century. So ultimately, the quest for connection, what I would say, one of my mentors said it to me like this: you've got to think about this area not in terms of municipalities, but think about the entire Northwest. And that throughout the entirety of the Pacific Northwest, and that includes Alaska to Portland, and of Bremerton to Butte, if you will, and perhaps even a little bit further east. By thinking regionally and thinking about connecting regionally, then you broaden the capacity to find the opportunity to find more folks. Now I know, and that might include like phone, digital connecting, right? Because maybe mobility is a challenge. But the biggest benefit and the way that I've survived and helped my children and grandchildren survive the kind of structural isolation with limited numbers throughout the municipalities, not thinking about the municipality, but thinking about regionality and making connections at every chance.
I was going to say, I'm not sure if I'm clear with your question. I guess I have my school nurse cap on at this moment. And what I'm thinking is having an ally in the building, where if it's related to school, having an ally that can walk with you to help you advocate for your youth, and help your youth advocate for themselves. If they're in school in the area in Bellevue, you can reach out to Africans on the East Side. And what we often do is we help parents advocate for their kids. And if we aren't able to, find those do it ourselves, we try to find people who can help. But I would say, find an ally who can walk with you, so that you don't feel like, and that your youth don't feel like they're just being abandoned. It sounds like there's some communication issues, like folks aren't getting it, don't understand. So we need to fill in that gap.
And I think my 2 cents is, I was gonna actually say, be an ally, be someone who can advocate when folks don't feel like they can, but also be ready for some of that self-reflection that comes with advocacy too. I think it's oftentimes not talked about as much, and but just be prepared for that to come and just speak up. Don't be shy and don't sit back. Be a part of it. Have this conversation.